And I'm very grateful for the Minister being here today for this. When I was around 6 or 7, I remember driving by the Wexford race course. It was a Stephen's Day. I was with my father. And there was lots of people gathered outside. They had placards. And I remember asking him what was going on. And he, at that point, explained hare coursing to me. And I was horrified. You know, I couldn't understand why anyone would ever want to subject another animal to something that horrific and barbaric. So I am very proud today to be introducing the Protection of Hare Bill. I'm proud for 7-year-old me, and I know my dad would also be proud. But, Minister, I do find it absolutely bizarre, frustrating, unbelievable that 40 years later that this practice is still allowed, that is actually still facilitated by government, when the majority of other countries have banned it because they've recognised how awful it is, how unacceptable it is, and how any civilised society should never, ever treat another animal in this way. But I suppose today, the timing of this bill is really important to me because it is Biodiversity Week. And I think when we talk about hare coursing, what gets forgotten a lot is that actually the hare is a protected species. The Wildlife Act has deemed it a protected species, and not many species in Ireland get that status. We've bat, deer, hare, hedgehog, otter, pine marten, red squirrel. There's not that many species. And yet the same piece of legislation that deems hare protected because of its importance environmentally and culturally in Ireland, the same piece of legislation allows you, Minister, to sign off on licences for the capture and holding of these hares for the purposes of live hare coursing. And I see that as a direct conflict within the legislation. If a species is protected, it should be protected. It should not be subjected to that kind of levels of stress and torment. And so the bill I'm bringing in today removes the Minister of Heritage's ability to issue licences for the capture of hares and will actually provide the hare species the full protection of the Wildlife Act as it should be. Each year, Minister, you or your counterparts sign off on the capture of 6,000 hares, a huge number. And I think in light of our biodiversity crisis, in light of every report that comes out, we hear about how our biodiversity, how our nature is being absolutely decimated. I believe that the first role of government when it comes to biodiversity, and the first role of yours, Minister, is to do no harm. Do not impact on the nature we already have. And unfortunately, that is not happening here. And whilst during Biodiversity Week, we see a lot of really great events and initiatives, and we ask people to do a lot. We ask everybody to do their bit. We ask each house, each school, businesses, we say, please do your bit for our nature, for our wildlife. Today I'm doing my bit for wildlife by bringing this bill forward. And Minister, I ask you as Minister for Heritage, please do your bit. This is something within your control. Please do your bit and stop the capture of these hares. It is unacceptable in this day and age, in this biodiversity crisis. It should never, ever be facilitated by any government. I do want to acknowledge the previous work of previous TDs in this House, so Trevor Sargent, Maureen O'Sullivan, and indeed Paul Murphy in bringing forward similar bills. I hope someday that we won't have to be bringing these bills forward. I can't see that happening anytime soon because unfortunately, despite 77% of Irish people not wanting this to happen, they want to see it banned. Unfortunately, the people who tend to sit on those seats in government, they listen to a very small vocal minority of people that are continually lobbying to allow this barbaric practice to continue. One day, I hope that we can actually end that for once and for all. I do also just want, before I go, I want to thank Ellen Murphy in my office and the Bill's office for their help with this. Thank you.
Is the bill being opposed?
Not opposed.
No, so the bill has not been opposed. The motion for leave to introduce is agreed. And so if the deputy could move that the second stage be taken.
I move.
Thank you. Is that agreed?
It's agreed.
Sinead, tá sasagan in it. That had no bit. We'll break for 40 minutes.